we can contemplate the solemnity of the body and blood of Christ from many different perspectives. It's an inexhaustible mystery. But let us look at it from basically two ways. That of as a meal and also as a sacrifice. We all are aware of what a good meal is like. And what is even more delightful is when the company is good. A meal, a dinner, is in a way Eucharistic. It foreshadows the great meal of the body and blood of Christ. It nourishes the members of the family physically, socially, and spiritually. Sometimes we have to make a sacrifice to come to a meal, whether it be on the Thanksgiving or Christmas, to be there, to show the unity of the family, perhaps even to forgive some members of the family, to be cordial. But it certainly is a type, a foreshadowing of the Eucharist, when we make a sacrifice to be at church or at Mass. In the first reading, we hear of Melchizedek. Melchizedek's father or mother, his parentage is not mentioned, and neither is the end of his life. He is considered to be eternal in a way, and his offering as a priest was an eternal priesthood, offering bread and wine, not an animal, but an unbloody sacrifice. In the sacrifice of Melchizedek, the King of justice and peace foreshadows in a way the bread and wine of the Eucharist. Also, we have in the responsorial psalm the reference to Melchizedek, the eternal priesthood. It's eternal because Christ only had to offer the sacrifice of himself one time. In the Leviticus priesthood, it was often, many times, because there's a temporal priesthood. We also see in the second reading how Paul talks about the bread and wine being changed into the body and blood of Christ. And we see again in the antiphon before the gospel that Christ is the living bread that has come down from earth to nourish us. It is in the context of a meal. And we see once again in the gospel how Christ would perform the miraculous multiplication of loaves to provide a meal for the 5,000, foreshadowing how he would provide another meal that would be eternal. The sequence of the Mass, the Laudación, Praise Zion, written by St. Thomas Aquinas in the mid-13th century. It is about the transubstantiation of bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ. There's some wonderful and marvelous verses in that. Sometimes we say that something is lost in a translation. And indeed, the English translation in our missalette loses some of the originality of St. Thomas. For literal translation, there's wonderful lines. Behold the bread of angels. It'll become the bread of children. It'll be truly the food of pilgrims. What is not seen or cannot be seen, what cannot be comprehended, a lively faith affirms that hidden in the bread and wine is the body and blood of Christ. It's for our nourishment, it's for our development. There is something related between Memorial Day and the feast of the body and blood of Christ. We reverence tomorrow all those who gave their lives for the freedom of our country. And of course, Christ gave his life for our freedom too. That these soldiers who gave their lives participate in a way with Christ on the cross. What was celebrated at the Last Supper is something that Christ commanded us to do, to remember him in memorial, to remember how bread and wine becomes the body and blood of Christ, not only to remember it, but to have another miraculous miracle before us as he fed the 5,000 miraculously. So through the power of God, the substance changes, but the appearance remained the same. Let us remember now when we receive Holy Communion this morning, we are not only united with Christ, but we are united with all the goodness that people perform throughout their lives, all the sacrifices that people make for those that they love. They give up something of themselves so that they can serve others, like Christ did. Christ not only offers bread and wine, but he offers himself, his own body and blood. And on this feast day, we are called to do the same, that we offer up to God the Father the body and blood of Jesus Christ.